this example is going to go from field work to a finished land development in 2D, 3D. You're going to design it with the help of this instructions. So we start from surveying. If you take data from the GIS and you think that's accurate, it is not. You need data from a land surveyor to be accurate and to have the comfort that someone had signed a survey and that you're starting out with some good data. So the initial site data is going to come from one of four sources for surveying. Raw data from a field instrument, which we can import into LandMentor. Coordinate data from a field instrument, that's the most common, and that's what we're going to use. Existing CAD or GIS file, we can import shape files, DXF, DWG, directly into LandMentor. So you could also export DWG. Drawing that must be hand entered with contours traced. That is the worst possible case. It's time consuming, but a lot of times you simply don't have the CAD data, but you have a survey that was done 40 years ago, and that's the best you're going to have. It's a little bit tedious and time consuming, but it will be accurate. And it will tell you if there's a error in the survey. Closure. So we're going to use coordinate data from a survey field instrument. So you're going to go into your examples, step one, and you're going to open survey data. So you're going to hit File, Open, and then go down to the right corner and go .txt, and you will see a file called Example Fieldwork. So you'll click on that and press Open. Now, the LandMentor can be English and metric, and it could flip in English and metric simultaneously at any time. So the default system is metric and English is the translation. So select English and then protect those surveying points because you don't want anybody messing with them because that's legal data. So after you read it in, it shows points on the screen. But what are those points? It just shows the floating points. And typically a survey is going to have, 400, 500, 600 points, even more. So the original data looks like this. There's a point number that comes out of the data collector, northern coordinate, eastern coordinate, elevation, and a description. So of these, what is the least important? Look at this. What is the least important information? Take a look. The point number. The point number is just a place in memory. What the most important is what that point represents. So the surveyor said it's a topo shot, an edge of drive, or something like that. And before computers existed, there was no such thing as a point number. So a positional coordinate geometry that we have developed for LandMentor uses what the point is. There are point numbers in LandMentor because we have to download back to a data collector, and we haven't changed the industry yet, but there are no point numbers in the real world. So we want to bring you back to the easy days. So how do we isolate those points? Well, we have descriptions on them. So you hit Edit, Limit Points by Description, and you'll slide the center line of the creek or whatever points you want to the right window from the left to the right, and then you'll press Show by Description. So the center line of creek points appear. No other points. You can't snap to any other points. So we're going to create them on a centerline layer. So we go to the layer pull down, there's a little arrow, push that arrow, and then select centerline. Now, a little bit about layers, because we're a surface-based system, you might be used to 5, 6, 7, 800, or even 1,000 different layers. It will be very unusual if you had more than 30 layers using this system because it's the surfaces. There are no layers in our world. It's surfaces. And so this simplifies everything. So you're going to have to get used to that to use this in a very simple, direct way. So now we're on the centerline layer. It should say centerline. Select geometry and then select make line. We're going to make a line between those points. So we're using all three buttons of the mouse. That's why we don't have multiple pop-ups and things like that. We're using all three buttons. So it's important that you learn those, and by the end of these instructions, you'll be a master at them. So the left button creates a new point and a line simultaneously. The right button snaps to an existing point. So with this instructions, take your finger off that left button. You're only going to use the right button. And the middle button will create a new line. So in other words, you've snapped to a bunch of points, you want to create a new line somewhere else. You clear it by the middle button, then start hitting the right button again. Do not hit the left button. So we would hit Edit, Limit Points by Description, Centerline a creek, move that over to the right, Show by Description, then you would change it to the centerline layer. You'll press Make Line. You'll see the right button goes to the nearest point. You don't have to be on it. It could only snap to center line of creek points. And then you connect the different points. At the end, hit Escape. You're out of the function. It's simple as that. Now, we'd want to go limit by points by description and then do your find iron rods, move those over to the right, show by descriptions. Those are your property lines. We'll go to layer 0. And now on layer 0, we'll hit Make Line. And we're again, the right button. We're only pressing the right button, and then we'll hit Escape. And that goes to the nearest point. We'll go to the building layer, edit. Again, limit points by description. Go to house corner, show by description, make line, and right, escape. So this is how you build your drawing. Limit points by description. We have a pond. Let's move that to the right. And actually, the only points the descriptions will show up are the points that are in your drawing. So if you had 1,000 different points, they're not all going to show up, just the ones in your drawing. So limit points by description, we got the pond. Now we're going to show everything, and what we've done is build up that drawing, but we also are creating the break lines when we go to the topo, so the topo will follow those lines. So they're physical items, and like the topo will follow the center of the creek, or I'd connect the top of bank points, things like that. So, how many new points were generated creating these lines? Keep in mind, in CAD and GIS, you're always creating points on top of points. How many new points were generated? None. We're using the points that are already there. So typically, LandMentor is in a snap entity mode. In other words, we're snapping to lines, curves, and line work. We're not snapping to points. If you press the mouse middle button, it will flip to a point snap mode. Press it again, it will go to an entity snap mode, just in case you need to actually get to a point. But the way this works, it'll automatically pick up most of the points. So now let's go beginning step 3 of the file, and I want you to say no, you don't want to override any of these example files. When you want to just use these, protect them, don't override them as you work. Just discard them because someone else will want to go through the training and you don't want to have to download the software again to get these beginning step files again. So now we're going to create the topo. So you see I've added the top of bank lines, the driveways, things like that. So we've got this ready for topo, okay? The boundary line crosses the creek line. And so you can't have break lines across. But again, the boundary line, well, that's ownership. That's not a physical thing. So you really don't want the topo to follow the boundary line anyhow. But the software will not let you topo if you have line work that crosses each other. So it's a protection. It will actually tell you the problems. So we're going to, I want you to press the layer button. You see on the layer button, to the left of boundary, it's active. So if you click it, it changes to inactive, and then you press done. So that deactivates the boundary layer. And you don't want to, it's semi-cumbersome. There's a lot easier ways to do this, but this is your training. So you're learning this step by step, even though there's quicker ways to do these things. So then, after you deactivated the layer, the boundary doesn't show up and we don't have any crossing lines. So if you right click the zoom extends, which is that square with the arrows on the squares, or press Alt Z, it refreshes the screen at any time you want. So we're going to create a digital terrain model. So you hit topography, create a DTM, and then instantly it's going to ask for a file name. Now, if you had 50,000 points, it's not going to be instant. But because we only had a few points, it's instant. You can see how the topo avoids the pond. It follows the creek. It follows the top of bank. It follows the driveway. It follows the homes. Those are break lines. It guides the topo, and it's used for the drawing. So you're dual purpose there. And the default name is going to be existing. Well, that's okay. This is existing ground. So again, why do you name the DTM? Why do you give it a name? Well, we can have multiple DTMs. You can have proposed ground, you can have existing ground. I tend to not do that. I have a proposed file, or I have a natural file. I do a lot of work with the earthwork and with roadway design. So I like a different file name for everything, but you don't have to have that. You can have everything in one file. So we can handle multiple DTMs at the same time. So use a name you won't forget. It does not database. It uses your computer for what it does best. It computes everything. There are no points generated for the DTM. There are no points generated for contour lines. It's always calculating. It's always computing. You want to go lightning fast? Get yourself the latest computer. If it's a 12th gen i9, get it. If it's a 15th gen i12, get it, because your work's going to go faster because it's always calculating. It will work on older computers. It's just going to be quite a bit slower because it's always calculating. When it does show the topo, the red is low, green is high. Now, what happens if it's all green? Well, you've got a bad elevation because there's some red somewhere. So if you don't see the transition from red to green, or if it's all red instead of green, you've got a bad point. And you got to kind of search around, where is it green and where is it red, and because it's transitioning from way off data. Again, we don't know if the elevation's real or not. We do have some checking, but what if you needed something that was way off? We don't know. Under topo, if you want the contour lines to always be on, it's a flip switch. Show hide contours always on off, and then you can turn them on and off on call, and you can edit the DTM. Let's say you don't like edge triangles, or the contour was done the wrong way. Again, you're using the middle button of the mouse. So for example, if you wanted to redefine those triangles, you would click to the nearest point with a middle button for an edge. If you wanted to erase triangles, you would then use the left button to erase, and then it will redefine the topography for you, and the right button finishes it and recalculates it. So then you've got a revised topo. So if you delete or change a geometry point, what's that do to your DTM? What do you think? The DTM is protected. You could go ahead and erase and change everything, so it's not going to change that natural proposed ground unless you want it to. So that natural ground, that's just an intelligence there whenever you need it. So it's just going to show it, compute it, earthwork, things like that. It's always there. It's always there for you. Now that you've turned the layer 0 off, to quickly turn it on, you just can hit Q. It's like a quick turn on off switch. And you'll still have to manually refresh the screen. So if you have different layers turned off, but you want to see everything really quickly, hit Q, and then, well, you want to go back to just isolated layers, so just hit Q again. So it's a flip switch. The parameters are set under topography and contour setup. So there's a lot of things you could do. You could change the intervals. You can move smoothing on and off. I would recommend never using smoothing because it does throw the contour lines off of where they actually are for the drawing, and I don't think it's needed, but it's there if you need it. Labels will label the major contour lines, and then we can also manually label them under the topography menu. There's a place contour elevation text. That's an intelligence on the line itself, and there are some common things that you might use, like slope shading in the design. Let's say you can't design over 20% slope. We'll just show it on the screen. Flow arrows will show you the direction of runoff, things like that. And it's really critical that you get that natural ground correct, because it's the basis for engineering and surveying, and it's really a basis of design. And don't kid yourself, these are all real examples of incorrect information. So it does happen. So review so far the initial site data you compiled, the boundary of the site, the existing structures. You've created a DTM to produce contours. More advanced with LiDAR and stuff, that's available. Those instructions are available to users after you have registered and completed this instructions, and then you go into more advanced instructions. The contour structure is integrated into the job file, so you don't need to have separate files for everything. Everything's in one file. Now, the next step we're going to do is to define the types of surfaces to really show you the power of this system. And again, all this is still introductory. So we haven't gotten to design yet, but we will, and we'll get into presentation, everything all in the same initial instructions.